need a long, tall, fantastic dream.
According to a statement from Smithville, Texas police on Saturday evening, they are still searching for Frances Weatherby, who disappeared after leaving her job at the First State Bank on Main Street Wednesday afternoon. Weatherby's car was found submerged in the river on Thursday morning.
Long, tall, fantastic.
Hey everyone, this is Reagan Mustard with Edgen Films coming to you from Austin, Texas. And in today's creative collective, we are joined by local filmmaker Andrew Shapter, who just finished his third feature film, The Teller and the Truth. And we are also joined by the lovely Leilani Galvan, who plays the lead role in the film. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So could you just give us a quick, brief synopsis of the film for maybe people who haven't seen it yet?
The Teller and the Truth is a narrative fictional mystery that employs employs documentary techniques to basically tell a story about a woman from Smithville, Texas, that goes missing shortly after a bank robbery, and it's a small town, sort of story, but it's based in some true stories that had happened in and around Smithville and abroad, and it's completely different than most film formats because it involves narrative acting, it involves real documentary elements, and silent film as well. So it's an odd format, but the Teller and the Truth, the title in itself is not necessarily about the truth about what happened to a teller as much as it is about a group of people are telling a story. Mm-hmm. Some people are telling the truth, some people are not. Mm-hmm. And which one is which is a sort of a puzzle for the audience members. So if somebody were to go in and watch this film without knowing anything about it, I think they would get very, very curious and want to know more. And that's kind of what we planned on happening.
So I was doing some research and I saw that you mentioned at the screening, I saw that you started doing research for this film all the way back in 2009, was it?
Oh yeah, I think even earlier. 2009 was the first time we actually started shooting things and like storyboards and things like that.
So that's 6 years, Yeah,
that's 6 years ago.
Long time.
Yeah, 5.5 that I met her.
Wow.
So yeah, she had to work for quite a long time in character, but it went all the way back to 2007. I was creating a love story about two small town people that rob a bank in order to afford to be able to get out and stay out of the small town. And while we were developing that story, I was in Smithville, Texas, and I had heard about this young woman that was involved in a bank robbery. And then I asked more about it, and then somebody gave me a newspaper article, and I saw this beautiful curly-headed girl flippant about being questioned about a bank robbery. And I thought, wow, that's a story there. Shortly thereafter, I ran into Leilani at Daily Juice, and she looked like the woman that I remembered in my mind, and so in that newspaper article, so the rest is history. 5.5 years later. Now 6 years later, actually.
Wow, that's cool. So did you see you saw a clip on video of this woman flip out?
No, newspaper.
Or a newspaper
An
article?
actual physical newspaper article, yeah.
Okay.
Which is in Texas Monthly this month.
And
March 2016.
What year was that those events were going on?
2008, 2009.
The newspaper article was from that year?
Oh, no. The newspaper artitle was from the 70s, early 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why our story takes place in the 70s.
Cool.
Prior to that, it was more of a modern story, but so I started asking questions and getting real documentary elements from people that were around when the bank robbery happened in Smithville. And that's when the actual movie started filming. We started with the documentary elements and then eventually turned it into a narrative, which is really odd because we switched genres in the middle of the film.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's not easy to do.
It's unique that way.
Yeah.
So what did was the city of Smithville pretty receptive to you poking around and making this kind of like thing that wasn't real, but real kind of? Were they like, you're painting a picture of this town that isn't, or were they cool about it?
I think we did paint a pretty accurate picture of Smithville. But the only thing that was fictional, well, there are a lot of things are fictional, obviously, but what happened in her post-robbery life is imagined. Now, the point of doing that specifically is if you have a loved one that goes missing, you have no closure, you have no idea if they're living or if they're passed on. So not having closure with a loved one, you can only fulfill what happened to them in your imagination, right? So this film represents what people might imagine came of a loved one that's missing. So we played on that, and because that happens in real life. So in our case, we start with some real characterizations of the girl, and we talk about the bank robbery as we know it. But then we launch into this imagination of what may have come, and that's where narrative fictional takes a hold, and the documentary is put behind it.
Shooting a film for 6 years, I believe y'all went to like 3 different countries. Was that right?
I think more than that. Like 5 or 6.
5 different countries. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it was shot locally in Smithville and around Texas in the desert and everything. But I mean, you went all these different countries. You went through chemo and radiation during the time.
Yes.
So amongst other things in life. So can you talk about the experiences that you went through during those years and kind of like the special challenges of shooting a film that way? And maybe why did it take so long? What happened? What was going on?
So this is probably something that a young filmmaker might relate to in the near future is, traditionally when you make a film, you maybe put together a teaser, but then you raise all the money and then you immediately go to work, right? When you raise all the money, right? But if you raise increments of money, are you going to sit still? Or are you going to start shooting what you can when you can? I did that, the latter. I didn't wait till I had a certain amount and then book off 6 weeks of everybody's time. Instead of crafting the film over 6 weeks, why don't we try to craft it over 6 years? So every single scene that she's in or that I shoot separately is well thought out and done to perfection. So instead of spending just a few hours on the scene with the 2 of them in the desert, why not spend the entire day around that scene instead of going to the next scene, because you can fall short. Your stuff can maybe not be as in depth. And that's one of the reasons why the shots are looking as they do, is because we took our time. So I would encourage anybody that has a passion project, don't be afraid to chip away at it. I mean, it's almost like a marble sculpture. You just have to chip away. But as time went by, I got a cancer situation, which slowed me down. But was ironic is at the same time, that's when it started garnering more interest. And the film started picking up more steam, and we had some odd things happen. So we would build, and then more money came in, and suddenly we realized, that fictional photographer that we were talking about in documentary form can now come to life. And so we went to Paris and cast a real photographer and built the film around that. And then we didn't really know what our ending was going to be. We honestly didn't, until we raised the funds to go overseas and create an ending. And
wow, that's cool. I didn't. Yeah.
So
it's just organically developed and took on a life of its own. Well, I wanted to ask you. So one thing I noticed, like us being friends for a number of years and being friends on Facebook, I would notice these like beautiful photographs, really artistic, beautiful photographs of you that you would share, and I just always thought, oh, she's doing modeling. These people are taking really cool photos, but I had no idea that I would later see them on the big screen in the film. And so it's like shooting a film like that, for being with you for 6 years, you essentially kind of saw your 20s play out on screen.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask you kind of, what was that like being with the character of Frances Weatherby for so long, and kind of is the adage of, life imitates art imitates life. Like, how do you feel like she's a part of you through that?
I think the best way to describe it is like most relationships in your 20s. They'll see a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And it was the same thing with my relationship with that character, with Frances. Sometimes I was really, really close to her, and I had to get quiet with myself to sort of tap into what she was all about, but it wasn't hard. But after a period of time, I definitely was kind of like sick of her. And I didn't really want to like relate to that person anymore because I had grown up, you know, and that's how, yeah, that's just the reality of it. To me, when I watch the film, I see that. So it's kind of interesting, and I'm always curious when I talk to other people if they have any kind of an inkling of that when they watch it, like all the different phases that character goes through, because I did, because it's a long period of time, you know.
Yeah, it's like she's
very
definitely
real.
a part of you. So
There might be two scenes side by side that are shot 2 years apart.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
When she's in the same scene.
Y'all did a great job of not. I read somewhere that you were like, or maybe at the screening, you were like, sorry for making y'all have the same haircut for like
Yes,
6
that's true.
years.
I'm pretty sure that the editor was like cursing my name when it came to how much my hair would change from like,
You've always had cool hair, though.
yeah, thanks. For like how much my hair would change like every, 3 or 4, 6 months. And so that would, since a lot of the footage we shot was different, and it was hard to like link things up.
Texting somebody that's in their 20s, a female, a creative female that especially lives in Austin, to not change your hair is not easy to do.
Yeah, that's,
I would say if you are going to take a long time making a film, make sure that your star actress gets a chance to have some diversity in her life. Don't make her wear the same.
sign a contract of how your hair will look.
There should be a conversation. We definitely explored all of that.
We didn't know that.
We worked
We didn't
it
know
out.
though. We didn't know it was going to take this long.
Yeah.
We had no idea. And there was one point where we
made it
just. Actually, I'm kind of glad that happened because it forced me to go, okay, I got to get these scenes done. So I was like, Leilani, give me 3 more days. And I just, give me, please, and I'll finish this thing. And we did. We got off our asses and we finished it.
And so you mentioned too, like, didn't you called it piggybacking the budget?
Yes.
And what were you doing in between to like raise more money? You were doing some shoots with like.
Yeah. Well, we would do a variety of cool things. We would one example is being on tour with Willie Nelson. We had a chance to do. We were doing music videos for Willie and on the side, and then
that was fun.
we all kind of hung out, and his people got along with us very, very well, and so we proposed that we go on the road with Willie and capture more music videos and capture more live stuff, and it's all available right now online and his websites and stuff, and we're really proud of that. But he would often have 2 or 3 days in between gigs, so we'd be in the middle of the desert and we'd think, okay, now. So she would come.
all of these different locations.
Yeah, she would come as a production assistant, and we would go. And so that's, suddenly our main characters are traveling through the desert because we were tracing Willie Nelson on another gig.
So we would go to help, with the crew.
Yeah.
And then on our off time we would go shoot.
That's cool because
It's pretty crazy now that I look back. I actually I think about that. That's kind of crazy, but it gets even more bizarre. We had a yoga video. There was an important video about how yoga and meditation can affect the human brain. So that took us to, it was a public television type of project. And so that took us to India. So obviously, perfect opportunity to put Leilani, AKA Frances Weatherby, on the crew. And so we decided to do that in order to make the story more global. And that's when it really took a dramatic turn.
Yeah, that was really powerful, that scene in the film. Can you tell us about that and the kids in India?
Yeah, that was completely unexpected. All of that footage that we shot that day, we were just going over there to visit and check out the inside. Andrew came and brought his camera, and we had our sound guy, and it was much more than I expected. Like, it was honestly really beautiful the way they had the elderly people like living upstairs, and then all of the children living downstairs, and then they would like take care of each other. So they had there was a lot of this family happening there. And when we went in there, they were super excited by the cameras and by me, and they actually like a bunch of the kids grabbed me and they took me away, and I didn't really understand. No one understood what was happening, and I was just like, okay, this can't be bad, you know. they're so cute. They take me upstairs to the grannies, they called them, and the grannies completely they wrapped a blanket around me, and they reached in and took off all of my clothes, and they put makeup on me and did my hair, and they're really positive about it. I'm like, okay, so this is still good. We're good. I'm good. Everything's cool, you know? I was like, I wonder where Andrew is. And then they put a little bindi on me, the whole thing. I tried to put earrings in my earrings, and I drew the line because they took them out of this jar of blue antiseptic where they kept all of their earrings that everybody shared. I was just like, cool, you know, beautiful. Yeah.
I'm totally sure about that.
It was
None of that was planned at all. And that's one of those things about if you actually start a film without an ending, you'd be surprised how that can actually work in your favor. There's no way we could have scripted that. Yeah. And then the words in which Francis uses to describe, you know, what to do with this money. I won't give it away, obviously, but that came from a woman that was having a very profound experience in India, and that profound experience came from interacting with those children. So that's real. I mean, that's very, very real. And so I'm real proud of that scene. And I'm proud of how she just walked in and just became in character. But I don't know. It was an unforgettable experience. And we hope to raise awareness and more funds for that organization, because that is nonprofit.
Yeah, actually, do you want to tell everybody what that is, or do you have the information?
Yeah, we can put it on our website. It's on our website too, but Anbu Karangal. So it's the tellerandthetruth.com might be a little easier path, but yeah, we're going to put up a donate link for
put a link to that. It's a charity and an orphanage in India. So
and we'll put it on our Facebook page as well.
Yeah, that's really special. So you've spoken a little bit about this, but I just wanted to ask you, you know, specifically, you've mentioned, and I think it's really cool being filmmakers as we are here at Edgen. You've said this is a new style of filmmaking, and you're kind of going with it too, because you liked the way some of the elements played out. So how do you feel like it's different? You're blending documentary and fictional characters. How is that different from things we've seen like mockumentary style or docu-fiction? What are you thinking is the new way? And I wanted to ask you, kind of if you want to talk about the special way in which you went about marketing this film, and were you thinking of Blair Witch style stuff?
Yes, early on we thought about Blair Witch, but to answer your first question, what's different? I would never use the word mockumentary for this, and the other word I don't like when it comes to our project is reenactments. If it were a documentary, a true documentary, then these would be reenactments. But even the documentary players are actors. Not everyone. Some are real. But some of the documentary players are actors. So it's just the format in which the actor is sitting and talking to a person who's also a character, which would be myself, the filmmaker, an off-camera character, but a consistent character, no doubt. It's not that I'm opposed to scripting. I know a lot of actors. There were some actors that I worked with that very experienced actors just were not vibing with this sort of unscripted thing. Until eventually I was challenged by that. So look at it this way. If I say you've never been in a film before, ever, and maybe you work in a general store in some small town, right? And you have the accent of that small town. I would rather cast you than try to bring somebody in from LA to play you or to play your type of character. So being that you probably don't have experience with a script, I would just tell you the elements of the story that you need to know. I would tell you the story. So that way when the actor comes in and interacts with you, you're just using your own words in your own authentic accent. And so that's an example of turning a real person into an actor, but on the reverse, turning an actor into a real person by also not giving the actor lines, but having the actor remember the story and use their own words. So, you have lunch with the actor or real person the day before. Give them the story in detail. The next day, you interact with that story. Yeah.
And so how did you go about kind of some of the marketing that went along with that? Like, did you, I noticed you wrote for Huffington Post and you wrote an article online. I'm sure you were thinking strategically about that. So can you tell us about how you did that?
Well, that's a little bit more straightforward about missing people. That sort of touches upon the subject of our film represents, you know, if you have somebody in your family that goes missing, you could just, like I said, you just imagine what can happen. But that was really a shout out to an organization that we had come across on accident called the Charlie Project. The Charlie Project is a national missing persons organization. Leilani wound up on the missing persons website, and not only that, but the Department of Public Safety missing persons website under the character's name Frances Weatherby, which, by the way, is my grandmother's name. I use my grandmother's name, you know, in order to not, you know, it's just by law you have to use fake names. You have to use fictional names. And that's when we realized it went too far. So I went on to Huffington Post to kind of explain that this is a narrative film, but it's dedicated to missing persons, and that's what that article was about. But prior to that incident that really kind of took us out of that Blair Witch type mode was, prior to that, it was really, we were just filming the project and people were coming around asking questions, and we honestly didn't know what to tell them. So by telling them nothing, drove them crazier.
Mystery.
Yeah, to the extent where there were blogs in you know, Mandarin about her, about the character, and they were Australia, I saw Japan, and I realized, whoa, this is getting kind of out of hand. So we became more open about it becoming a narrative. And also the Toronto Film Festival taking it in as a documentary, as opposed to a narrative, which it was. So even those jurists there were seeing it as a documentary. So we must have done a really good job with those actors. And it's kind of, we're getting a kick out of how many people believe it's a documentary. I guess that means our acting was pretty on spot on.
Yeah, the acting and the mystery behind it and everything, and the old police footage was really realistic. So I definitely.
Well, not only that, but the photographs of her are analog. And there's something my favorite story of all the stories that we've ever told, and involves her and the fact that shortly after I had met her, I talked to her about the project. She was very professional, and then she interviewed me, you know, because she's just that way. You're very cautious in protection, and she should be. But when she decided that she liked this idea and liked this project, she's also very sure of herself. And that was very attractive. And so it got to the point where on the very first day that we hung out, on the very first, she started prodding me about, and I was just thinking I was just going to take some pictures of her, but she was prodding me about, tell me more about this character, tell me more about this character. And I did. And the very first frame that I took of her is the movie poster. The very first frame. Yeah, the eyes say it all. So that's when I thought, oh my goodness, maybe this girl can play this lead role, you know, and she did. She did great.
Why did you choose the silent aspect of the film? Like, why did you choose to not give her a speaking role? You know, what did that mean to you to portray her character and the other lead role that way?
Because she's missing, and she's in people's imaginations, right? They remember her as she looked. They remember, and also because I knew that her imagery was a driving force for the interest in the project. So much so that we had to lean on Leilani heavily to not. We didn't give her the what I would say a crutch of dialogue, where she would just be, I'm sad because of this or whatever happened. She has to wear complex emotions in her eyes and on her face. When I realized that she could actually carry the film non-verbally, which I think is very, very difficult to do, and then put a lot of pressure on her. But we knew that just by sort of saying action and then giving her just a few minutes, she just transforms and transforms into the character. Even after a 6-week gap between scenes, she just flipped on a switch and became, and I think a lot of it, I don't even know this for sure, but is that she would just tap into her own life. And so by giving her, but she does have lines, and people don't forget, people, when she answers the phone, that's the first time you actually hear her voice. But she becomes more mystical.
Adeline.
Yeah.
She becomes more mystical. And just like when a person goes missing, they become more mystical. You just have imagery. You don't have that voice anymore. It represents what it's like to long for somebody that's missing.
And in a way, it allows for a lot more creativity, like in terms of what you can do with the beautiful, like really interesting footage that we shot. When we made it silent, like we could mold it or craft it into any like many different meanings, So I always thought that was really a fun aspect of it.
It makes you for sure wonder about her. Do you have anything specific to like an actor or actress that might be watching this that you could say was like an obstacle about portraying a character that way, and something that you really had to get in touch with to do that without speaking?
I would say one of the big challenges, like we talked about earlier, was just that I changed as a person throughout the duration of the film. Frances did too, but it became harder and harder for me to relate with Frances, because honestly, I became a stronger, like, empowered person. I started to actually, when I would have my, like, I call them like conversations with Frances that would get me into the mode to work with Andrew, I just began to like disagree with her more. It sounds weird, but that was like the biggest challenge. I related with her less, Yeah. That's like
cool that then you got to be really learn to be good at what you do, which is be an actress and still get in touch with that character, even when your personal life was diverging from what she was relating to. I have this friend, he's into film, and he, like, it's interesting being silent. He was like, is she French? Because he just, people just assume things when they can't hear your voice. So
that's what we wanted to happen. We wanted everybody to have an imagination, but and also I think it drives people to want to know more about who was the actress that played her too, and who was the inspiration, and what was she really like. If we put all of her out there, then we would lose that.
Definitely. The music in the film was awesome, and I know music is a big deal for you. One of my favorite music documentaries, Before the Music Dies, it's critically acclaimed and awesome, and that was your first film. And just talks a lot about the music industry. It was 11 years ago, but just a great thing. So if y'all want to check that out, but there's a lot of really local Austin artists in this film, and it really helps to bring it to life. And I wanted to ask you, how did the score come about?
The score was for the most part, it's Carl Thiel and Aaron Ivey, of course, but Carl Thiel was the composer that came to us after getting engaged with the pictures. I think he was mutually friends with myself and Leilani, and he had seen stuff online, and he became really engaged with it. Now, he normally works with Robert Rodriguez, which is, Robert is vastly different than what I do. So I'm sort of low budget, telling stories without dialogue and much action, and he's doing the exact opposite. So for Carl, this was a stretch. This was something completely different than what he does day to day. So he came in and said, I want to do the music of this film. So we had to raise our game for him in order to, I'll never forget, like I said at the premiere, that when he gave us trailer music and she heard it for the first time, she said to me, Andrew, we're going to have to make a film that lives up to the music. And that's what we did. He made us raise our game. And then the vocalist you hear is Aaron Ivey.
I love that song.
And they created that originally for the film, so we're really proud of that.
That's so cool. Yeah, I was looking for it, and
the soundtrack is coming out.
I couldn't find it yet, so
it's coming out. Yeah,
but I keep playing it. I keep playing the preview just to listen to the
hear
song.
Absolutely.
It's so good.
Yeah. A shout out to Aaron Ivey.
Yeah, she's awesome. So y'all check out the soundtrack when that comes out. And then another thing, visually, the cinematography in the film. We've talked about that a little bit, but it's just so beautiful. It's got this really vintage and artistic feel. festival that I was super drawn to, and the landscape of Texas and the desert, kind of like is interwoven and just bring this magical sort of dreamlike quality to it. So was that your vision originally, or how was that look achieved? Did you want to make such an artsy film to begin with and like make it look vintage, or did you have someone else that was doing the
vintage stuff was me. We had a variety of different shooters on this as well. I would say Josh Marr, Paul Galvan, but for the most part, some of the main shots were generally me early on, the national parks and all that stuff. But that was more of inspired by my favorite directors, Terrence Malick, Pedro Almodovar. They use these beautifully vast settings as a tool, as a part of the narrative, and I love that. And also Westerns, we're big fans of Westerns, and so there's that Western element to it. And that's just, a guy that's been behind a camera for a long time. And sometimes I couldn't afford a DP, so I'd have to shoot him myself. But there were a couple of other very talented guys that joined me in that. And we recreated the look. We wanted to recreate the look of a 1970s Western. And so that's why it has that very gold, warm feel to it all the way through.
How has the film been received? I mean, I know it premiered at the Austin Film Festival back in
November.
Right. And so it's been out a while. Tell me, where did it screen and everything, and then where is it now?
Right now, it's available just about everywhere. Right now, I would encourage you to go to iTunes and look for The Teller and the Truth, or I encourage you to go to Amazon, Apple TV, and also Google Play, Xbox, DirecTV, Time Warner, Comcast, and Vudu, V-U-D-U. So all of those are outlets, and so obviously that's wide distribution, and the rarity of that is not lost on us. We are very, very, very excited, and we very much appreciate the opportunity to get wide distribution. That's not very common with a film like this. And we're very honored to also be on the front page of iTunes. I don't know how soon this will air, but at the moment we're on the front page of iTunes. And I can tell you, as somebody that was in bed, with doing chemotherapy, couldn't even get out of bed at one point. The menu on iTunes, I looked at it and aspired to say, we're gonna have to get the film on that menu. And there it is today.
So awesome.
We did it.
That was so cool. Such interesting conversation. So we'll put a link below to check out The Teller and the Truth. Andrew also told me he's working on another film, and he just released a cool music documentary called The Road to ACL. So you can find that on DirecTV, and be sure to subscribe to us as well. Once again, I'm Reagan Mustard with the Creative Collective. We are artists supporting artists.